Trusting your intuition will lead you to create a passionate and joy-filled life. Are you ready to get turned on to a new way of thinking? Are you ready to meet people who have conversations that speak to the things that truly light you up? What if you had access to a podcast that featured women just like you, who shared stories that empowered you to let go of a life tied to others' expectations and to start living in the now with passion and joy? I'm Jacqueline Rodriguez, founder of Your Intuitive Light Coaching, owner of Enlightened Styles Holistic Salon, and your host of the Intuitive Light podcast for the enlightened entrepreneur. My goal is to help women recognize how tightly they are tied to negative thoughts and other people's expectations, so that they can fully embrace and become the untethered CEO they've always wanted to be. You're about to meet some amazing women who will inspire you to untether yourself from any fears, negativity that you carry and become the untethered CEO of your life. This podcast is for you, woman, champion, warrior, entrepreneur, mother, phenomenon. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Intuitive Light podcast and show. I'm your host, Jacqueline Rodriguez, and I am really excited for today's episode. We've got the amazing Nicole coming on today, and she has her own law practice in California. And she also has legal templates and more that you can go online, this beautiful online business where she gets to share all of her knowledge. And we are going to talk to her today and find out all the goody details about her business and how she got into it. So without further ado, here is Nicole.
Hi.
Hi.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. I'm super excited to have you on here. We met at the Entrepreneur Experience with Amy Porterfield, which was an amazing experience. Plus the fact that we got to connect with so many business owners and amazing women that we've created these relationships. And I'm just so blessed and grateful for that.
Yeah, it is so interesting to me. I've gone to so many kind of regular business networking events, and that was actually my first kind of entrepreneurial networking event. And I just had such an amazing experience. I met so many people, and it's funny because those relationships, over, going into 6 months, 7 months. It's been a while. I still keep in touch with everybody. So
me too. Actually, I have May Kay coming on the show as well. I don't know if you got a chance to meet her, but we just had so many people there, and it was fun and exciting. And this is really why I started the podcast, was because I have such an amazing group of women entrepreneurs, and they're so knowledgeable, and they've got all of these successes, and they've gone through fears and all of these things that we have to do as women entrepreneurs, that we can really create a community together and support and help one another. And I'm just blessed that I get to sit here, talk all day. This is golden. I love it. And then I get to show, how amazing so many women are and what it looks like to actually build a community to lift each other up versus, all the stigma about tearing each other down or trying to one-up each other, which I think is so important to have that community.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that connecting with other female entrepreneurs has been one of the best things that I've done for myself and for my business. And I think just spiritually, it's been such a great thing to find other women who are driven and have that passion and that purpose. So it's been fun.
Yeah, and that is why we got a chance to have you come on the show. And I want you to tell all the viewers about you. What's your background? How did you get into all of this? And then what you're doing.
Yeah. So I am Nicole Cheri Oden. I'm a licensed attorney here in the state of California. I've been practicing for almost 9 years now. And so I have my own law firm as well as an online business. So in my law firm, I practice both family law and contract law for online businesses. In my online business, I actually offer legal templates for other online entrepreneurs. So if you have an online business, but you're not yet ready to hire an attorney to sit down and draft custom contracts and policies, but you know that you need to get some protections in place, getting a legal template is an affordable and accessible option for you to get something in place, and just to make sure that you're protecting yourself and your business.
It is super important. And it's one of those things that I think a lot of business owners as well, especially on the online space, because it's so easy to just like open up shop and start business. But it's so important to protect yourself. And I love that you've made it easy and accessible for some of those that we don't have the income yet of being able to hire a full-time attorney to, keep everything going for us. So having those templates is super important that everyone should have, and everyone should protect themselves. And I'm sure you're going to go into more of why that is, because there are things that we really, I'm not an attorney. I have no idea about any of that stuff, but I know that it's important to stay connected or protected.
Yeah. So it was kind of an interesting journey just finding myself in the online space, because I had my brick and mortar firm. I've had that for going on 4 years now. And after I had my daughter, which was when I made the transition into opening my own firm, because it was just so hard to juggle the 12 to 14-hour days at my law firm. And I knew that I wanted to continue what I was doing because I love being an attorney. I love my practice, but I had to find a way to make it work around my daughter's schedule because I still wanted to be present as a mom. And so in the middle of all this, I was kind of struggling with postpartum anxiety. And so that's kind of how I stumbled into the online space. I'd had my Beachbody coach reach out to me. And so I kind of stumbled into this rabbit hole of MLM. Found that wasn't for me, but I still really fell in love with the online space and the connections I was making with women there. And the second they'd find out I was an attorney, it was like all of a sudden the conversation would flip and they'd have all these questions about their online business. And so when I would say, you should chat with an attorney in your area to make sure you're kind of taking those right steps, they'd just be like, oh, it's too expensive, it's too scary, it's too overwhelming. And that was kind of when the light bulb went off in my head that there was a way that I could serve these women and make sure that they're doing the right things for their business and protecting themselves in a way that is a lot more affordable and accessible for them. So it's kind of become my mission in my online business to kind of make legal not so scary, to kind of uncomplicate this very complicated topic. So.
And that is so, I love that you had that epiphany because it's so important. It is scary. It's super scary, and it is not affordable for everyone. And it depends on where you live too, and you just don't know where to really get started. So you taking that huge leap and that faith of starting this online business has made it so much easier for you to reach out to so many more people and serve them in such a different way. And what I want our viewers to see is no matter where you're at, no matter what you're doing or what space you're in, look, an attorney can flip and go online and think outside of the box, which is so important because we box ourselves into what we are supposed to be doing. And you took that leap of faith, which I think is amazing.
Thank you. Well, and I think the big thing is really kind of flipping the script around the concept of legal and protecting your business and looking at it as an investment for you and for your business. I think it's one of the smartest investments that you can make. So whether you are working with an attorney one-on-one or you are deciding to go the legal template route, I think you just need to look at it as though you're protecting yourself and you're protecting your income and you're protecting the relationship with your clients and your customers. And I think that's kind of an important way to flip that script, because I think so many people, especially heart-centered entrepreneurs, kind of the more woo-woo or the more, the people that are really coming at it from a place of service and they're coming from a place of I'm doing what I'm passionate about, what I love. They like to kind of say that, oh, if I get a contract in place, it just kind of feels icky. It feels too formal. Like I don't need that. But you really have to look at it as this energetic shift to where you're not only protecting yourself, but your clients and your customers. And it's this two-way street that kind of forms the backbone of your relationship. And if you can have that solid backbone, your working relationship is going to be so much better for both you and your clients and customers So that's kind of, I just like to always remind business owners that that's kind of the way that you really do have to look at it. And I think it feels so much better and less scary and less overwhelming. And then you don't feel like it's so expensive. It feels more like a necessity and an investment.
I absolutely agree with you. And I love that you flipped it with the heart-centered entrepreneurs, because truly it is the best way for you to serve your clients. And that's what we do. As heart-centered entrepreneurs, we serve. This is the best way to serve. And it's just another layer of that, that overarching serving that you're doing. It is necessity. It's not an option.
Mm-hmm.
Because you want to protect both parties, and that energy shift and sending that energy that you are protecting your client is going to transfer so much better than kind of hiding in the shadows and being scared of legal stuff. And I know a lot of entrepreneurs are, because it is so deep and so many different layers. So you were talking to me about the importance of written contracts, the written contracts, not just, talking about something with your hands. What does that look like? So what was the steps that you would walk them through?
Mm-hmm. So before I jump in, I'm just going to give my standard disclaimer. Everything I share today is legal education and information. It is not legal advice. It doesn't create an attorney-client relationship between us. And you do want to chat with an attorney in your area to make sure that you are taking the right steps for you and your business. So I think that written contracts are just key for your online business for so many reasons. I think the first being that it really is protection for when something happens, not if. I think that is kind of the unsexy, unglamorous side about being a business owner that we don't like to talk about. We don't like to talk about a customer or client asking for a refund. We don't like to talk about maybe a dispute over what was agreed to be provided in terms of services, or even like a customer getting into your online course and perhaps using your materials in a way that you didn't authorize, like sharing your workbooks with somebody who didn't pay for the course. Unfortunately, it's going to happen. And I think it's a rite of passage for all business owners. You kind of know you've made it when you have an issue arise, unfortunately. And so having that written contract with clearly spelled out terms is just such a great fallback for you, to make sure that everything that you can kind of stand on is in one document. That's, like I said at the beginning of the conversation, the backbone of your relationship. So I think that's kind of one of the key reasons. And if the question's not if it's when something's going to happen, then also making sure that you are kind of saving yourself time, money, and a headache for when that happens. Because if you can fall back on your contract, you know how you're going to handle the dispute. You know what your refund policy is. You know if you're going into, let's say, arbitration or mediation, if you get to that point and negotiations kind of fail in terms of finding a resolution. So it does save you a lot of that time, money, and a headache, because you can't put legal protections in place after the fact, unfortunately. So once you experience that issue and you're like, oh my gosh, now I know I have to get this in place, going forward, that's great. But you're still stuck in that kind of hot water position trying to clean up the mess. And I just think it's smart to protect your income. So even if you started your business from a place of service, from your heart, you're still in business to make money at the end of the day.
Well, and it's a shift of energetic. I don't know why I can't think of the word today. An exchange. Yeah. That's the word. An exchanging of money for gifts that you can give to your clients. And it's the exact same thing with having those contracts, protecting that, because let's face it, first off, you don't want to be in hot water like that, and you don't want to be freaking out if something were to happen. Having this in place up front protects that. You no longer have that breakdown moment. It's very clear, okay, this step, and this step. This is what's in the contract. This is what's going to happen. So you save yourself that anxiety. And you have to protect your money, because if you don't, no matter how much we're heart-centered and we only want to serve, if I have no money, I cannot serve. So I have shut down all of the energy around serving my clients if I'm not protecting myself and our clients.
Exactly. Exactly. I think that's such a good way to just kind of flip the script on it. I think it just makes it so much more approachable and important. You really understand how important it is to kind of move forward.
Most definitely. So then you get your contract. First off, what is a contract?
Yeah, that's a good
talking
place
about
to
all this,
start.
but not everybody knows.
Yeah, so I think it's important to know that a contract really can be oral or written, and both can be enforceable. But I am a firm believer that written contracts are key if you are a business owner. For those reasons that I just kind of outlined, it's such a great backbone for your relationship, and it gives you one location to go ahead and look back and see how are we handling that. Even if you have a client, ask a question about maybe expanding the scope of your services. If you've outlined in your contract exactly what you're providing, then you can kind of go back and say, well, this is what we agreed to. Perhaps you can enter into, an amendment to the contract, and we'll charge you an additional fee. But it just makes the process so much cleaner. So a contract really is just an exchange of promises. So one person is promising to do something in exchange for something else. And while they can be oral or written, I think is just where it is as a business owner in terms of protecting yourself. And interestingly enough, every state has differing contract laws. So that's something that you have to kind of keep in mind. So I'm licensed in California. I have, the experience in terms of working with contracts here. And there are kind of universal truths in terms of contracts, but there are slight variations depending on what state you're in. And every state has their own statutory kind of outline as to what contracts should be in writing. And so I just think it's so key to just really look at it as though every contract for your business should be in writing, because a handshake and a smile only gets you so far. And then you're in court and it's he said, she said, and it becomes kind of this battle of memory. And I wouldn't want to stand on that in hopes of my memory is going to sway the court compared to the other side's memory. So.
No, I definitely would not want to be in that position, because again, we're entrepreneurs. We have enough stuff on our plates. We don't need the added stress of something like that happening. And you said it before, it's not if, it is when. It's going to happen. Something is going to happen. And we don't obviously want that, but you want to be protected. And in written, like, you have signed, exactly what's going to happen. Both parties agreed to it, where just talking, it's great. A smile is great, but it doesn't get you anywhere.
Yeah, it's only going to get you so far.
Yeah. And then we had here, I think we talked a little bit about why it's important. The keys to the contracts for business owners. Like, again, we're not in this space, like we don't know what we're looking for. So what are the key things that we would be looking for? I know that you have some templates, but if you could guide us on what we should do next.
Yeah, so I think that one of the key contracts as an online business owner is really having your client agreement if you're a service provider in place. And that's going to outline things like your scope of services. So, exactly what service you're providing. A payment schedule. So what are you being paid? When are you being paid? How are you being paid? Is there a refund policy? And even if there's not a refund policy, just very clearly delineating, I don't offer refunds. If you accept installment payments, kind of how that works. You want to be very, very specific in these provisions to make sure that you are protected. So I think it's really smart to kind of sit down and flesh out those kind of key concepts, and whether you're going in to meet with an attorney to sit down and draft the contract, or whether you're using a template. I think just really having a working knowledge of your business and what you're providing and kind of your boundaries is really, really important. I think it's also important in your client agreement to provide what's called an intellectual property provision. So a lot of service providers kind of share files and videos and workbooks and these types of things. And I had mentioned earlier about people kind of signing into your course and taking your materials and dispersing them to other people. You can actually put in your client agreement or even in the terms of use for something like your membership or your e-course that, that's your intellectual property. It's proprietary information, it's protected. And if you find out somebody's using it against the terms that you've laid out, you kind of reserve the right to enforce however it is that you go about dispute resolution. So whether that's, going into mediation, whether that's going into court, whatever it is, or even if it's just kicking them out of the membership or, terminating services, you've got a leg to stand on if you find out that there's been kind of some bad behavior on their part in terms of your proprietary information.
And that is so important because it happens.
Mm-hmm.
People take your information. You see it all over the time, like all over the place. I think I had a few Instagram pop-ups that had my logo for my salon and different pictures, but like they stole my logo and the name.
Yeah.
And how, you got to have something, obviously with that's not a client relationship, but it happens. So protecting yourself in that way, because we spend a lot of time, energy, and money creating these things for our clients and for our, courses and memberships, that we, reserve the right to keep it protected, and somebody can't just steal all of your information.
Yeah, and I think especially in the online space in today's world, it's so easy to just go Google or hop on Pinterest and you see a photo that you're like, oh, this is great, I'm going to go use it. And you slap it up on your website or you use it on your social media, not like reposting it with the attribution, but you're just using it like it's yours. You can't do that. There's copyright protections. And as a business owner, it is on you to at least have kind of the initial understanding about what you can and can't do, because especially under copyright, saying I didn't know is not an excuse. You can get slapped with a cease and desist letter and get a request for you to pay damages, and you can try and negotiate the damages down, but more likely than not, if you really did infringe somebody else's copyrights, you're on the hook for a damage payment. So yeah.
And that's some scary stuff. Like, you don't want to use somebody else's, and you certainly don't want other people using yours. So having a plan in place protects you. And again, it goes back to that freedom of knowing if or when something happens and somebody tries, you make it. People are going to try to take your stuff. So you have a place or a protection plan in place, so that you don't have to freak out. We don't have to go all crazy trying to, figure out what to do next. We have somebody there to help us. And that's what's having an attorney under, on your payroll does for you as well. And that's where we flip the script, saying that this is a non-negotiable. You got to have somebody in your corner.
Yeah. Yeah. So outside of your client agreement, if you have an online business, having your website policies in place is very, very important. So a privacy policy is actually legally required by both California law and now under the European Union law that was actually enacted in May of 2018, or that's when it went into effect. It had actually been enacted a few years before, but these data privacy legislation, what's been passing, it's like years later is when it's finally enacted. And so everybody's playing catch up at the last minute. But there's been this kind of energetic shift, especially in the online space, because those spammy marketing tactics that kind of took over with email marketing. And it's so easy to get information in the online space now. And finally, the law is catching up. We take a little bit to get going. And this is why it's really important, if you're going to work with a small business attorney, to find somebody who has experience in the online space, because it is kind of its own unique area. But they're really trying to give power back to the consumers now. And they don't want people being bombarded with spammy, sleazy marketing tactics. They want people to understand what information is being collected about them and how you're using it, and give them the option to basically opt out and say, no, you can't have my information. So you really do kind of have to have your finger on the pulse in terms of privacy legislation, which can feel overwhelming. But if you find an attorney who's blogging about it and sharing the information, I think that's really, really smart, just to kind of follow along and read along. Do your due diligence as a business owner. Unfortunately, it is part of being a business owner. You have to have a working knowledge, at least, of the legal landscape, so you kind of know what's at play. And it's part of why I always recommend to entrepreneurs you do at least like an annual check-in with a small business attorney, just to check in for updates and how they're affecting your business, and maybe how your business has switched and morphed. Are there things that you need to be doing to make sure you're complying? And then also having your terms and conditions on your website is a big deal. So those aren't legally required, like the privacy policy, but they do kind of lay out what your website users can and can't do in terms of your website and kind of your policies. They're the rules of the road for you. So I think those are key. So your client agreement, your privacy policy, and your terms and conditions for your website. I think those are kind of 3 important protections to get in place as a business owner, contract-wise.
And are those contracts, like, do you have those templates in your online space?
I do. So in my legal shop, I have a client agreement for coaches, like health, wealth, business, fitness, and then also an online service provider agreement. So if you're a virtual assistant or an OBM or graphic designer, whatever it may be, I have that as well as a privacy policy, the terms and conditions. And I do offer bundles too. It's like a discounted rate where you get kind of more contracts kind of in one sitting so that you kind of know that you've got your basic protections in place.
Wonderful. So everybody listening, you can go on and get, if you don't already have an attorney that you work with, you can get the templates, but then I know you recommend taking those templates and in your own area, finding that small business attorney that can help you make sure that it's worded to your industry and what you're doing and the terms and conditions of what you want for your business.
Exactly. So the templates are customizable. They're annotated so that you can kind of follow along. It kind of takes you step by step in terms of what to enter or what to omit, depending on how you're going through. But I do think it's smart for business owners to still take that completed template and sit down with an attorney, because I just think that insight for your unique business is so, so important. And no matter where you're getting a template from, I think it's really, really important that you're not just Googling, you're not just pulling something off of Google, because you have no idea if there's provisions in there that are actually going to hurt you in the long run, if there's provisions that are missing that you really should have in place. And it could be copyright infringement. That's somebody else's proprietary information. And if you're using it in a way that you're not authorized to use, again, you're kind of exposing yourself to some issues. So don't Google your legal, and make sure that if you're gonna go the template route, that you actually snag a template from an attorney. And so there's people out there that offer templates and they're not licensed to practice law. And I think that making sure it's from a reputable source is really, really smart on your behalf. And you can ask around and ask for referrals. There are so many attorneys now, I think, in the online space that offer templates, or even just an attorney in your area that can kind of point you in the right direction. I think it's such a smart way to go.
Well, it's so, it's important to know that when you go online, you can't just Google and take everything. And that is that copyright, but that's the first thing a lot of entrepreneurs go to. And I think that there's so much to be said by having somebody in your corner and somebody who is going to look out for you first and foremost. Plus, again, with the heart-centered entrepreneurs, like, we want to look out for our clients. So it is a two-way street, but we both have to be protected. And you don't want to go to court or something going, oh, I Googled this template, or I just took, from somebody else that, like you said, it may hurt you. You may have wording, because I don't know how to read these things. That's why we hire attorneys. You look at these and they look like Chinese to some of us.
But that's why it really is actually so imperative that you understand your contract. So if it's not your zone of genius and you're looking at it and the language, this legalese, is just not something that you want to try and tackle, that's where having somebody in your corner that can sit down with you and kind of run through and explain the terms so that you're comfortable with it. Because you're going to have a client, you're going to send this contract, you're going to have a client come back and ask what a provision is. If you don't even know what your contract is, how do you feel comfortable kind of moving forward? So I think it's really, really important that you understand what's in that contract and that you're actually doing the annual check-in. Even if it's not with an attorney, it's just by yourself to do the annual check-in and review your contract terms and make sure that they match with your offerings and kind of where your business is. I think it's such a smart move.
Well, I love that we've been able to have this conversation and really think, before we got on the call, you're like, oh, not everybody wants to listen to just the legal stuff, but viewers, you have to know this. You're an entrepreneur. It's that part of the business. Like, we all have our thing that we love to do, but nobody wants to sit and talk about legal or taxes. It's not the sexy part of business, but it's something that you will be so grateful that you listened in and you got the templates when something does happen. So having you, and I just love your energy and everything that you bring to it,
Oh,
because you do make it a little more sexy and you bring it a little more fun out of it, knowing that you truly care and you just want to protect business owners and their consumers, their clients.
yeah. No, I appreciate that. That really is, that's my mission. It really has just become getting awareness out that it doesn't have to be overwhelming protecting yourself and your business, but you have to do it. You have to build that solid foundation, especially if you're trying to build a legacy business that you expect to survive and last a long time and perhaps pass down to your kids. If you haven't built that solid foundation from day one, you're kind of building on unsolid ground. And if something happens, that whole house of cards could come crumbling. And I don't want to see that, especially as more and more business owners are flocking to the online space. And it's easier than ever to just kind of open up shop and say that you have a business. I think it's just so imperative to kind of have a handle on this information from day one.
Yeah. And this is, excuse my ignorance for not knowing, but in line of the templates and getting all of your contracts together, but also knowing what other things you need to do to start a business, even if it is online, because I know, like, you still have to have a business license. There's so many different things that you really have to know before you start the online business. If you open up shop and you don't have any of these, you're really setting yourself up for failure.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think just doing an initial kind of search on your state Secretary of State website, just typing in like starting a business, typically they have kind of a guide that will at least show you kind of the things to do. And I actually have a guide. It's called an Online Entrepreneur's Guide to Starting a Business on my website, that kind of lays out some of the initial, everything from your business entity kind of to getting an EIN number to kind of those initial contracts you want to have in place. Just kind of a little roadmap so that you can take a deep breath and know you're taking the steps and doing the research that you need to do.
And that is the type of people you want in your corner. So if you're not in California, Nicole is still a great resource to start getting some of these in place, and then you're going to save yourself money by getting the templates and then taking them to your attorney, because they don't have to do everything. Am I correct by saying that?
Yeah, because a lot of the price does come from the drafting. I mean, the attorney is going to sit down and have a really in-depth conversation with you about what your business does and doesn't do, no matter whether they're drafting from scratch or if they're looking at the template. But if they already have the roadmap, that groundwork done, then they're just going in and kind of tweaking things and moving things around. Maybe you didn't include a service that you offer in the scope of services provision, or maybe your refund policy is a little bit more in depth and you have some requirements before you give them the refund that needs to kind of be fleshed out a little bit clearer. So just having that second set of eyes to go in and kind of look at the tweaks that you did is a really smart move.
I love that. And I highly recommend everybody going on and checking out your website, getting those downloads, looking at the guidelines that you have listed out. This is a really simple way for you to be able to go on and start looking and opening up this whole box of goodies, because we have to have it. We do.
Yeah.
It's not an option. So having you on here really has meant a lot, to be able to start opening and letting that conversation happen and starting to think about it. And now you have some great, our viewers have some really great resources to be able to start moving in that direction and become, like, you're setting all this time and this energy into this business. Don't let this be your one downfall. Take a few days, open this stuff up, really start researching it. And then once you have it in place, you just have to review it once a week. I mean, a year, not a week.
I actually recommend quarterly, but I think that that's a really daunting thought to a lot of, especially newer business owners, to kind of be doing a quarterly check-in. So at a minimum, on an annual basis, I think that's really, really important.
But when you have support like that, and you have, like, we can go in and look at your stuff, get the templates, give it to somebody in our area. And if you're in California, give it to her. Like, she'll draft it up personally for you. But being able to, like, it's not so daunting when we have steps already. The daunting part really is just opening that can of worms and starting that, and then doing quarterly check-ins, or at least once a year. It is really important. And I know that I need to be better about quarterly and making sure that I have all the pieces, because I've looked and, I may be missing something. I have to always take a look, because everything shifts and changes as my business grows. And we don't think about those things. We add on new things. We've got to make sure that that's in the contracts as well.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing. You could be hiring an independent contractor. You could be changing your refund policy. A lot of people have kind of shifted now with everything going on in our current economic climate to starting to accept installment payments, or maybe longer installment payments. And you want to make sure the terms of the contract match kind of what you're offering. So things like that. It's just those kind of small minutia that can slip through the cracks that could end up being a big glaring problem down the line. So it's important to just kind of do that check-in.
So important. Well, I really appreciate all your expertise and spending this time with us, explaining all of these things and really giving us that structure and the support that we need as entrepreneurs. So you have your website there, and I know we have some other links that is all going to be on the blog. I'm going to make it super easy to follow Nicole and to be able to find all her information. Do you have anything else that you want to say before we wrap it up?
Well, I appreciate you for having me on so I could share this information. And I think that your listeners are doing the right thing. They're just listening. If you're just starting to consume and this is a topic maybe that you've put off and you haven't explored, I think just taking that first step and listening and kind of becoming aware about the things that you need to pay attention to is a step in the right direction. So
it all takes those tiny steps, and then one foot in front of the next. And then you can really start to blossom with it all, and it starts to make things a lot easier. So I appreciate you being able to put that out there and let our listeners, take that first step, because we don't know what we don't know. And if we don't know all of this is important and that we have to have it in place, that's when we start setting ourselves up for failure. So
Exactly. And ignorance is not bliss, unfortunately, in the eyes of the law. So
no, and it's not, as an entrepreneur, it is not bliss, because you set yourself up for so many things that can happen. And we put our blood, sweat, and tears into our business. We don't want something to come up and take that from us or put, a damper on what we have built. It's so important.
Exactly. I agree 100%.
Well, fabulous. I want to thank all of our visitors and our viewers for coming on, listening to us. Thank you, Nicole, for being here. And I'll make sure everything is nice and easy for them to be able to find you. And I will catch you on the next podcast. Thank you so much for listening today. Please make sure that you go over to the blog and follow all the links for our guests and get the downloads that we talked about. I would also really love and appreciate if you would share this podcast with your friends and family. And if you wouldn't mind taking just a minute to leave a review, that would mean the world to me. Thank you again so much from the bottom of my heart for listening and staying tuned. Can't wait to see you next week on the show.